ज्ञानतिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनाशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषशून्यवादी पाश्चात्य जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। So Hare Krishnas. Once again, we welcome each and every one of you, despite being a working day, coming along. So sincere gratitude to you. So let's begin with our program for today. We're going to start with the chapter 3 of Bhagavad Gita. Let me just go back. Is working? Okay, fine. So we are on the subject matter of Gita Essence, where we're going to discuss in brief or in summary form all the 18 chapters of Bhagavad Gita. So we started our journey with chapter 1. We'll do a quick recap of it. In chapter 1, we saw how Arjuna asked Lord Shri Krishna to drive his chariot in the middle of the army. Krishna brought his chariot right in the middle, and seeing his relatives, his grandfathers and others, Arjuna gets bewildered. Therefore, this chapter is titled as Arjuna Vishad Yoga. And what are the lessons, what are the life lessons we can learn from these incidences we have discussed? We had done a recap yesterday, and we definitely had a whole detailed discussion on the first day, that is on Saturday. And in the first chapter, Arjuna gave 4 reasons why he would not like to take part in the war. Beginning with compassion, enjoyment, with whom would I enjoy if my relatives are not there? Then fear of sinful reactions. If I kill my own teacher, if I kill my own elders, wouldn't I get sinful reactions? And fourth, the destruction of family dynasty. After that, these are the reasons that Arjuna gave in the first chapter. That's how the first chapter ends. Arjuna is totally hopeless. Sanjay describes at the end of the first chapter, or at the beginning of the second chapter, that Arjuna sat down on the chariot with his mind filled with grief and eyes filled with tears, and he has put his Gandiva bow on the chariot. He seems totally shattered and hopeless. Like that, the chapter 2 begins, where Arjuna continues to express his grief. And in the 6th verse in chapter 2, Arjuna mentions, "My dear Lord, I don't want to fight, but yet I don't know what is best for me." So he doesn't know what he should be doing. So there was a state of indecision which Arjuna expressed, which is the 5th reason, with which you can say Arjuna Gita ends, because until now Arjuna was speaking. And now Bhagavad Gita begins. In a sense, after this, Lord Shri Krishna begins to speak, but not exactly Lord Shri Krishna began to speak after this. Actually, first Arjuna surrendered. And I had discussed this a little bit yesterday. We all have friends. They give good piece of advice, but we don't necessarily pay heed or attention to it. When Arjuna and Krishna were thick of friends, it was actually Krishna who orchestrated the kidnapping of his own sister Subhadra, despite the annoyance of Balaramji. Krishna arranged for the marriage of Subhadra and Arjuna. There's so many occasions. Krishna was present with Arjuna when, on the instruction of Krishna, Arjuna burnt the whole Khandava one and satisfied Agni Devta. Many instances are there like that. So they were already thick of friends, yet Arjuna said, "Shishyastayam sadimam tvam prapanna." My dear Lord, now I accept you as Guru. Please kindly guide me. And thereafter, the second chapter begins. And some of the key messages that we saw, or the key lessons that we saw in the second chapter. The second chapter acronym was Gita. We're using the acronyms by His Grace Satyaput Prabhu, who had devised it. So we saw it in the 4 sections. The very first section from verse number 1 to 10. The discussion was on the subject of Guru. I will not go into details. We have already discussed yesterday. But we made a point yesterday that the beginning of the spiritual life begins with confusion, which means inquiry. You know, when you're confused, you inquire. That's the beginning of spiritual life. And we progress in spiritual life, or we can only start our spiritual life when we get shelter of a Guru, just like Arjuna had. And to be able to acknowledge one's weakness, confess one weakness, and accept Guru requires humility. Humility is not a weakness. Humility is the greatest strength, if only we understand how to utilize it, where to utilize it, like that. And in this set of verses, we also learned 3 keys of success from Arjuna. Arjuna was hopeless, and after that, at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, he became a hope-giving for whole of the Pandavas, and later on he won the war. He was humble, he was always eager to learn, and he accepted a guide, a mentor. Everyone needs a coach. You're a swimmer, you need training. You're a student, you need a training. Everyone needs a coach. Similarly, for life's challenges, when it comes to dealing with life, we need a spiritual coach. That was a point made in this first section. Second section was the beginning of a spiritual knowledge. The foundation of spiritual knowledge is, who am I? Krishna establishes we are not the body, but we are the spiritual. We had a whole discussion on that. So if I am the soul, is what I learned today. So how does my tomorrow looks different than today? What I'm going to do differently tomorrow to be able to, for it to be for me to be a soul, not a body. So we discussed about 2 duties that Lord Shri Krishna discusses from verse number 31 to 53. Until today, when we were ignorant of our real self, we only had one dharma, one duty, which means taking care of bodily needs, the family needs, and material prosperity. But when Krishna has established about spirituality, he has established about spiritual need, that there are certain spiritual aspirations, spiritual prosperity that needs to be taken care. So Krishna says there is something which you need to do to take care of your material needs, that is bodily needs, called as Swadharma. And for the purpose of spiritual needs, the needs for the soul is called as Sanatana Dharma, Nitya Dharma, which means doing activities which helps build one relationship with the Supreme Lord, chanting the names of the Lord, mantra meditation, reading Vedic scriptures like Bhagavad Gita, hearing Krishna Katha, hearing about Lord, deity services, etc., etc. So after establishing these 2 dharmas, these 2 duties, Krishna says the most progressive path, to be progressive in life, one has to strike a balance between these 2. To the degree we are able to strike a balance, to that degree we satisfactorily move in the journey of our life. At the end of the day, we get material prosperity and we also get spiritual prosperity. Sorry, I'll take my words back. Not at the end of the day. While you begin to practice both the paths simultaneously, you begin to get prosperity both in the material life as well as the spiritual life. That's how Lord Shri Krishna concludes up to 53rd verse. And then Arjuna asked a question, my dear Lord, how do I identify a person who have attained this stage of perfection, self-realized stage? Lord Shri Krishna says, well, Arjuna asked 4 questions. What are the symptoms? How does he walk? How does he speak? How does he sit? How does he walk? The questions have internal meaning, which we had discussed yesterday. And Lord Shri Krishna gave an answer. To conclude chapter 2, Lord Shri Krishna said, to attain peace is only possible when one becomes freed from desires. It's only possible when one is freed from the desire. Just like consider turbulent ocean. When the waves are subsided, that's the time ocean becomes peaceful. Similarly, in the ocean of our mind, there are constant waves, the turbulence of waves of desires that keeps us agitated and disturbed. So to get rid of it, or to pacify the mind, to control the mind, is the objective of yoga, the message of Bhagavad Gita. To give up work is not the message of Bhagavad Gita, not the purpose of yoga. To engage in work and to control the mind is the objective and is the purpose of Bhagavad Gita, which we shall see from the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, titled as Art of Smart Work. And in this chapter, which is chapter 3, so when Lord Shri Krishna have spoken, chapter 2, Srila Prabhupada titled it as Contents of Gita Summarized. So something interesting to note, it's a summary of rest of the Bhagavad Gita. So in one way, Lord Shri Krishna have already conveyed what Arjuna is supposed to do. But thank God, Arjuna didn't understand. And he asked a question. Therefore, we have chapter 3, chapter 18. Otherwise, we wouldn't have rest of the Bhagavad Gita. Even despite reading 18 chapters of Bhagavad Gita, so many scholars are confused what Krishna is trying to say. Imagine what we would have understood where Krishna only spoke 20, 25 or 30 verses. So, thankfully, Arjuna was confused. And what was Arjuna's confusion? It's a very interesting thing. Confusion leads to inquiry, and to inquire is a sign of intelligence, Srila Prabhupada says. To inquire is a sign of intelligence. So thankfully, Arjuna was confused, and his confusion led to an inquiry. And inquiry was, my dear Lord, you have said so many things in such a short span of time. I really don't get it. What do you want me to do? Are you saying I should stop this sinful activity? Because unless one stop sinful activities, cannot take to the path of yoga, which means the war is sinful activity, then therefore I should go to the forest, renounce. And simultaneously you are saying you should perform your duty. Karmanevadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachan. So you are saying, am I supposed to work? What are you saying? Can you please make it simple and tell me, am I supposed to fight, which Arjuna is thinking is a sinful activity? Or am I supposed to walk away from the war, go to the forest and renounce? That's how chapter 3 begins. And to make it simple once again, we'll have an acronym for chapter 3 as tree. Chapter 3 again is kind of categorized into 4 sections. Let's take a look at the very first section, T for Tyaga, verse number 1 to 9. Tyaga refers to renunciation. So in this section, from verse number 1, where Arjuna inquired, and from 2nd verse onward when Krishna begins to speak, Lord Shri Krishna establishes the right definition of renunciation. The word renunciation is loosely considered, people generally consider it to be giving up family life, living a celibate life, going to the forest, giving up professional responsibilities, stopping actions. No, that's not what Lord Shri Krishna says and explains renunciation is. Lord Shri Krishna says there is no use of renouncing externally while simultaneously you are attached with the sense objects within your mind, which means you might have given up on, let's say, the bodily comforts. But when you see someone else enjoying life, you become upset, demoralized, and you wonder, like, am I really doing the right thing, or the other person seems to be more happy, which means you still have attraction for those comforts which you had given up, and you're not yet sure what you're doing is right or wrong. So the subject matter of fixing in our life is our mind. What needs to be fixed, what needs to be corrected is our mind. And we'll see this discussion step up again and again in the next few chapters also. So therefore, Lord Shri Krishna takes up the subject matter, because for Arjuna, spirituality meant, because he wanted to live a spiritual life, suddenly on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So for spirituality for him meant an active retirement from a life. But Krishna says, no, that's not what it means. So Bhagavad Gita is not about leaving. Bhagavad Gita is about living your life. A lot of people think if my son, daughter, if my family members will study Bhagavad Gita, they will give up family life. No, not at all. I don't know when did Arjuna give family life. I read through the whole Bhagavad Gita, only the whole of Mahabharata. Never ever Arjuna gave a family life. Only time when Arjuna gave a family life, when Yudhishthira gave a family life. Bhima gave a family life. Yudhishthira gave a family life because Krishna had departed away, and Narad Muni had already instructed post Dhritarashtra's departure to the forest, when Narad Muni came, that once Krishna leaves, Yudhishthira, you can also leave. So Arjuna followed his elder brother, and that's the only time when he left. And when Krishna spoke to Arjuna Bhagavad Gita, Krishna was 89 years old. And when Krishna departed from this world, he was 125 years which means 36 years later. So Arjuna lived a princely life, performed his administrative duties for the next 36 years after hearing Bhagavad Gita. So where is the message of Bhagavad Gita about living family life? It's not correct. The main student of Bhagavad Gita did not do so, just for your information. So, renunciation of work is the question that Arjuna asked in the first two set of verses like that. And Krishna tells Arjuna, Arjuna, you cannot artificially give up the work while simultaneously being attached to the fruits of the work within your mind. So, what are we supposed to do? Krishna says, Arjuna, do not become a pretender. That is the worst thing that can happen. Oh, I'm sorry. I guess presentation is not visible to all of you. I just realized. So don't be a pretender, Krishna tells to Arjuna. What it means, let's take a look at a beautiful verse, what Krishna speaks. Karmendriyani samyamya yaste manasasmaran indriyartham vimudhatma mityacharam sauchyate. One who restrains the senses of action but whose mind dwells on the sense objects certainly deludes, which means cheats himself, and is called a pretender. Which means he has externally withdrawn his senses, but his mind is still attached to the sense objects. Like that. So Krishna says, do not do like this. This is not the path of success. This is the path of fall down. You have artificially given up on prescribed duties. You have taken a path of renunciation. You're not performing activities. You're living as a mendicant. You're living as being a dependent on the society, on the position of a renounced order. However, simultaneously, rather than focusing your attention on Brahman or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, your mind is still attached to the sense objects which you have pretended to leave behind. And what happens? Dhyayato Vishayan Pumsa Sangaste Supajayate Sangas Sanjayate Kamat Kamat Krodho Vijayate Kamat Krodho Sammohas Smriti Brahmasad Buddhinashu. Like that, the follow verse comes, 64th verse. I a little bit got confused with the second verse here. So point is, whatever our contemplation is, that's what we act. And if such a person who's a pretender, which pretender means whose mind is meditating on sense objects, he will become a cause of a nuisance in the society. He will destroy the good name of a renounced order, and he'll become the cause of the destruction of the society. Like that, Lord Shri Krishna warns Arjuna that we should not do it. Before we take to the path of renunciation, attempt for it, one should see if his mind is purified enough to live this life purely. So what is renunciation? Renunciation is not about abandoning one's worldly duties, but to give up the mentality, I am the controller and the proprietor. Therefore, Lord Shri Krishna in 3rd chapter, verse number 9, defines what Karma Yoga. So question arises, if renunciation is about giving the mentality, I am the controller or the proprietor, how do I give up that mentality? It's just not by thinking or by knowing that I have this mentality, I should give it up. We cannot give it up. There's a process, there's a path of purification that we need to follow. That is called as yoga. Yoga means connecting to the Lord and purifying our consciousness. So how does it happen? Lord Shri Krishna gives the answer. How you can rectify your consciousness, free your consciousness from there, is through doing work in right consciousness. Let's read out the verse, and then I'll give you one simple example to help you understand this, why we should follow this instruction. Yajna arthat karmano nyatra lokoyam karma bandhana tadartham karma kanteya mukta sangha samacharaha. Lord Shri Krishna says, work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, work causes bondage in this material world. Therefore, O son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction. In that way, you will always remain free from bondage. So someone may ask, what Lord is doing for me? What has he done for me that I should be utilizing the fruits of my hard labor in the service for him? Work should be done as a sacrifice towards him because that pleases the Lord. Why should I bother about pleasing the Lord? Let's take a very simple example. Let's say you are a builder, no, not a builder. Let's say you're a construction worker who is hired by a builder to make a building. Now, you put a lot of hard work, a lot of sweat and blood into making let's say, a 10-story building. You have worked for months and years to make that building. Now, if that construction worker says, hey, I did this hard work, I made this building belongs to me, would you agree with that proposal? Yes or no? Does the building belong to a construction worker? Yes or no? So, okay, if you say yes, because I can see some of you on the screen, you can raise your hand. If you say no, okay, let's do thumbs up, thumbs down. That's easy. If you say no, give me a thumbs down. Okay, no. Construction worker has no right because he has been hired. He cannot do it. In case if anyone thinks yes, we can have a discussion further on it. So, the construction worker is not independent. He has been provided by the raw material and every facility to make that building by the builder. Similarly, if you see, everything in our life has been provided by the Lord. Let me ask this very simple question. Let's go back onto the screen again. How many of you, let's do a quick raise hand activity, okay? Let's do a rapid fire round. You have to say, raise your hand, or else you type in yes or no on the chat, whatever works fast, better for you. How many of you control your body temperature? Yes? Nobody. How many of you manage your pulse control or the pulses, heart pulse? How many of you are conscious of how your kidney and lungs are functioning? How many of you are even conscious how your eyes are blinking? Even the breathing. So many of the things, we have no idea what's happening with us in general, if you look at it. Not only this, according to medical science, according to biology, according to medical science, 95% activities that happen with our body are autonomous. We have no idea of how it happens. We only have 5% control on our body. Now look at about what we need for our sustenance. We need food, we need water, we need oxygen. Now who supplies? It's an unfortunate thing today. If you ask a small child, from where do you get a milk? He'll probably say D-Mart or Walmart. But the milk does not come from the D-Mart or Walmart. Milk comes from the cows. How does the cow produce milk? Cow gets to eat grass. From that, it digests and produces milk. From where does the grass comes? From the land. To whom does the land belong? From where does the seed comes because of which the grass came into existence? For grass to grow or for seed to fructify into a grass, it needs the sunlight, it needs the water. From where does all this natural resources comes? Therefore, Krishna says, Bhoktaram Yagnatapasam Sarva Loka Maheshwaram. In the 5th chapter, verse number 29, we'll see that. So, if you a little bit think about it, we don't own anything. So, similarly, therefore, Krishna says, the fruits of your labor, don't be attached to it. Because when you work, the results are awarded by me. You cannot claim right on it, and you cannot consider yourself to be the responsible for that fruits. Therefore, Krishna is saying here, so perform your duty. Srimad Bhagavatam speaks about a word, karmatmakam buddhi, which means because of millions and billions and trillions of lifetimes in this world, we have got heavily conditioned to do work. Our mind has to be engaged in something, has to be thinking about something. So we cannot not think. Therefore, we cannot give up on activities. It's all hallucination, which they say that you can give up on actions. That's just not possible. So we have to do a work. Therefore, Krishna says, rather than prematurely or immaturely taking to the path of renunciation, giving a professional family life, etc., why don't you get a simple solution? Follow a simple medicine. Follow a simple solution. Continue doing work. Dovetail your propensities in service of the Lord. For example, you like to eat nice vegetarian food, offer to Krishna, honor it for yourself. You like to dance in the kirtan. You like to listen to nice music, listen to the kirtans. You like to read about books, gain knowledge, read Vedic scriptures. Like that, you'll find an alternative in a spiritual circle for every desire that we have. Krishna says, do that, and the work, continue doing that. Just the results that you get, utilize in the service of the Lord. That is how Krishna defines Karma Yoga here. So in essence, Karma Yoga can be summed up in two words. One is detached and dutiful. Detached from the result of the work, and dutiful means continue performing your work for the pleasure of Guru and Gauranga, as it is said. Arjuna reflected. What Arjuna reflected? Let me ask this question to all of you. How many of you think it is possible for you right now, as Krishna has said to Arjuna, be detached from the work and use the result of your work in the service of the Lord? Let's say one result of our work is earning. So how many of you think I can use all my earning, I can do a donation of all my earnings and give it in the service of the Lord? How many of you say it's very difficult or it's not possible? I give you two options right now. If you say yes, then we have already discussed about you in the previous chapter about the self-realized soul. We already attained the stage where they're totally detached. So how many of you say not possible or you say it's difficult? Okay, all right. Less possible, difficult. Okay, great. Thank you. Good news is Arjuna also pondered on the same thing. I hope the screen is visible now. Yeah. So Arjuna reflected on Lord's instruction and he began to think, my dear Lord, what about those people who cannot perform Karma Yoga? How can they advance? So thank God, Arjuna continued asking questions. So he's asking question on behalf of us. What's hope for us when we cannot follow Karma Yoga? Krishna says, no problem. In verse number 10 to verse number 16, now Krishna will define or describe about yoga ladder. What is this yoga ladder? Krishna says, and the very first step of the yoga ladder, but it's not a very first step of the yoga ladder, it's a stepping stone to the yoga ladder, is Karma Kanda. What is Karma Kanda? Karma Kanda means living our life, rather enjoying our life. Krishna speaks about Karma Kanda in 2nd chapter, verse number 31 to 38, where Krishna says, if you want to be happy in this world, you need to perform your duties. When you perform your duty, then you get results and then you enjoy with it. You have the facility to enjoy. So Karma Kanda is to perform your duties, get the result, and live for yourself, enjoy your life. However, with a condition, do not break the boundary. And what is that boundary? The 4 pillars of dharma. No meat eating, no intoxication, no gambling, and no illicit relationship. We should not engage in any of these sinful activities. So within these 4 walls, if we can continue to live our life according to Vedic injunctions, work harder, enjoy the results, that's called Karma Kanda. But what happens gradually when a person performs his life or lives his life like this, he gradually gets purified. How does he get purified? Because sooner or later, gradually person will come to this realization. And what is that realization? And the realization is, whatever you do, how much ever you work, the senses can never be truly gratified. They just can never be satisfied. In Hindi, they say, ye dil mange more. Our heart or our mind keeps on longing for more and more. Gradually, a person understands, the more I try to enjoy, the more frustrated I become. So therefore, when he comes to this realization, he inquires, why am I suffering? And that's where his spiritual life begins, from this very important query. And when he gets an understanding, you're not the body, but spirit soul, we should perform yoga, which means establishing our relationship with God. And there, at that point of time, he comes to the very first step of yoga ladder, which is called as Sakama Karma Yoga. Sakama Karma Yoga means where he is attached to the work, attached to the results of the work, but he utilizes a fraction of the result in the service of the Lord. Because he understands, I have to please the Lord, I have to build my relationship with the Lord. I have tried enjoying this material life for long, but I have never been satisfied. I have been doing the same things life after life, and I'm still frustrated. So therefore, he understands, he starts the process of yoga, linking with the Supreme Lord. He continues living like this. This whole process is across lifetimes. It can take multiple lifetimes sometimes. So he continues living like this. Gradually, he understands that actually we cannot enjoy in this world only. Let me ask this question, or let me give you one example of happiness in this world. Srila Prabhupada gives a very gross example. I'll give you a little example which is more relatable. Prabhupada quotes from an ancient story to give an example. Let's see if you can understand the nature of happiness that we desire or aspire for in this material life. The nature of happiness is such, the more we suffer, our suffering, let me put it this way, in a mathematical equation, our happiness is directly proportional to our suffering. The higher the suffering, the higher the pleasure that we get. Now you might be confused, what am I talking about? Let's imagine I give you all a glass of water. And in case if you're not thirsty, you probably may not accept my offer for drinking the glass of water, right? Thirst is a suffering. Any kind of a craving is a suffering. But imagine you had gone out on a sunny day, you had done some hard labor, you come back, you're thirsty, you're really thirsty. And now I give you a glass of water. You probably will gulp down several glasses of water immediately. And then you will say, aha, maja aa gaya. Pani kitna acha lag raha hai. I mean, this is an expression in Hindi. You'll say, wow, I feel so relish. I can relish the water now. Is it making sense? The higher the thirst, higher the experience of drinking water. If there is no thirst, just even to sip of water would be a difficulty, isn't it? So our happiness in this world is proportionate to our suffering. So while engaging in this kind of a Sakam Karma Yoga, person actually not only understands theoretically, he gets the realization, then he comes to Nishkam Karma Yoga, where he's still attached to the type of work, but now he's fully utilized the result of his work in the service of the Lord. He continues living like this, and then gradually he comes to the stage of Jnana Yoga. I'll not go into details of it. We'll discuss this in the later on chapters. Then to Ashtanga Yoga, and then finally to Bhakti Yoga. Like this, Lord Shri Krishna explains to Arjuna, find yourself where you're on the yoga ladder, or maybe you're not on the yoga ladder, you're in the Karma Kanda section. Find yourself somewhere and begin your journey. So let me ask this question to all of you. Where do you find yourself on the yoga ladder? Or do you think that I did not discuss about your platform at all? You're not only on that. So you don't have to tell me anything. This is just for information. It's very important, first of all, to understand where am I on this yoga ladder, and then we can move forward. So that's the point here. All right. So let's move forward to the discussion. Oh, where is the window? No. Yeah, it's here. So that was about yoga ladder. So when Arjuna heard this, Arjuna understood and agreed, acknowledged that Karma Yoga is the best practical process by which one can overcome his worldly desires and attachments. He understood that Karma Yoga is a gradual process, but it is less risky, but there are hardly a chance of fall down in comparison to the, Jnana Yoga, the path of renunciation, like that. So then Arjuna thought. What did Arjuna thought? My dear lords, I have no worldly desires. I am freed for any desires or longing for material happiness. I know I am not the body but spirit soul. So it looks like I am qualified to practice Jnana Yoga. So can I please renounce now? So once again, Arjuna comes back to his old story where he's still attached to the idea of giving up the war and going to the forest. So once again, Arjuna kind of proposes, so my dear Lord, then I guess I should retire because I am on the Jnana Yoga section. So I am that much qualified. So what did Krishna say to this? And this brings us to the third section of chapter 3, E for exemplary, verse number 17 to verse number 35, where Lord Shri Krishna says, Yad yadachrati shreshtas tattadevataro janah sayat pramanam kurute lokastad anuvartate. Whatever the great man follows or performs, a common man follows. And whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. Arjuna, you're not an ordinary citizen. You're one of the greatest or great leaders of the world. And common man is certainly going to follow your example. You are supposed to live by your life by an exemplary behavior. Therefore, you should set an example of performing your duty. In fact, whenever I descend into this world, I perform my duties. When I appeared as Lord Ram, I established Maryada. I was known as Maryada Purushottam. In different roles when I come, I perform the duties. I do not act outside the principles of dharma. If I have to do so, I'll become the cause of the fall down of the whole civilization or humanity in general. Therefore, you should also perform your prescribed duties. Lord Shri Krishna, apart from giving his own example, also gave an example of Janak Maharaj. Gave an example of Janak Maharaj, how by performing his prescribed duties as a service to the Lord, he attained his spiritual destination, a spiritual goal, which you may attain by taking to the path of renunciation. But why to go to the risky path? Why don't you take to the path of setting an example like that? Then Arjuna thought, it's very difficult to give up, your attachments. So Arjuna again thought, my dear Lord, if you want me to set an example, let me be an exemplary renunciate. Let me set an example of renunciation, and I'll be a perfect exemplary renunciate like this. Arjuna begins to think and propose. He has not spoken, these are not the words in the Bhagavad Gita, but Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains the mindset of Arjuna, which impels Krishna to speak in a certain manner. So in verse number 26 to 29, Lord Shri Krishna says, Arjuna, most people are not qualified for following the example of renunciation. And if an unqualified person, which means who has a lot of material desires, if he renounces worldly responsibilities, he will eventually try to fulfill it through irresponsible means and will become a cause of chaos for the society. Therefore, for you, the need of the hour is not setting an example of renunciation, because you are at the battlefield. You are a Kshatriya. Your duty is to punish the culprits and protect the rights of the victims. Here, victim is your own elder brother. You yourself are a victim, and your wife is a victim. You cannot leave them at this point of time trying to artificially create an example of renunciation, because if you create this, then you can imagine in the future to come, the kings who would become fearful of fighting with their enemy will begin to follow your example. Like Arjuna renounced at the battlefield, I can also renounce. He was a great man, so I will also do the same thing, and they will hide their cowardice. You should not do so. You should fight, because that is your dharma at this point of time. Once you have performed your duties, once you have established the dharma, gradually you can think of it, not right now. Like this, Lord Shri Krishna discouraged Arjuna from renunciating or taking to the path of renunciation. And then Lord Shri Krishna discussed what is the purpose of Bhagavad Gita. This is one verse on which Srila Prabhupada has given many classes. And Srila Prabhupada himself called. This verse describes the purpose. What is it? Mayi sarvani karmani sanyasya dhyatma chetasa nirasha nirmamo bhatva yudhyasva vigata jvaraha. O Arjuna, surrendering all your works unto me, Mayi sarvani karmani sanyas adhyatma chetasa, with the full knowledge of me, nirashir, without any desires, nirmamo, desire for controllership, yudhyasva vigata jvara. Jvara means laziness, giving up laziness, engage in your occupational duty. So that's the message of Krishna to Arjuna, and through Arjuna to all of us. Continue performing your prescribed duties. If you have a doubt about your prescribed duties, take shelter of a bona fide guru, understand from him what kind of duties I should be performing according to my varna, according to my ashram, and then make progress in your material life as well as in spiritual life. And finally, Lord Shri Krishna concludes this section in verse number 35, where he says, it is very important for one to perform his own prescribed duty rather than performing someone else's duty. Why Krishna says that it is important to perform one's own prescribed duty? Because it brings steadiness in life. Because you are naturally inspired to do the work which is according to your psychophysical nature. If your work matches with your psychophysical nature, there is no need for anyone else. You don't need external stimuli to inspire you to do your work. First thing is that. Second, it brings steadiness. Just like in today in IT world, there is such a what they call as iteration, dropouts. I'm missing the whatever word they call it. Let's call it dropout. And today in IT companies and IT domain, there are so many people are jumping jobs, shifting jobs. So many people are leaving company. It unnecessarily brings the disturbance in the society. In that sense, I'm saying, people keep changing their profession these days. So it brings a steadiness. It's a peace of mind. Everyone has its own place like that, and it helps in social organization. There are Brahmanas, there are Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. Unfortunately, today there is no social organization because maximum are Shudras, according to the definition of Shudra, like that. So like this, after hearing this most practical and logical process of Karma Yoga, Arjuna was convinced that he should fight. That's what Krishna wants. However, he had one very, very practical question and very important question. Arjuna regained his determination and enthusiasm to perform his duty, but based on his experience, he kind of realized that it is not always possible, despite knowing what is the right course of action, it is not always possible to follow that course of action. Arjuna began to ponder and he asked in the 36th verse of chapter 3, "My dear Lord, I know what is right for me, but there is something within me which still impels me to take to the wrong direction. I don't want to do that, but I am forced helplessly to that sinful act or to take to that wrong path, which in return destroys me, and then I repent for it and I cry for the mistake that I do." How many of you think it's a relevant question asked by Arjuna? How many of you have experienced this? I know what is right for me, but I still end up making blunders or mistakes. Yes or no? If possible, you can type it into the chat box. As being on Zoom, I can see your answers like that way. So, okay, so it's a relevant question. I would say it is in fact one of the most important questions for us at this point of time. So that brings us to the last section of the chapter 3, where E, the acronym TREE, where E stands for enemy of the soul. Let us paraphrase the question that Arjuna asked in a modern context. Arjuna said, when a smoker knows the danger of smoking to his health, he has been diagnosed by the doctor, he has been warned by the doctor and by family members not to smoke ever again. He has decided not to smoke again, but still he smokes and then regrets. What power forces him to do so, although he does not want to do it? And I believe all of you agree that we all have an experience of similar situation. Krishna says it is nothing other than lust, which is called as eternal enemy of the soul. Kama yesha krodha yesha rajoguna samudbhava mahashano mahapapma vidhi enam hiverinam. My dear Arjuna, it is lust, Kama, who is accompanied by his younger brother Krodha, which is born of mode of passion and ignorance. Kamesha Krodesha Rajoguna Samudva. Mahashano. Shano means destructive. Mahashano, the most destructive. Mahapapma. Papa means sinful, the most sinful. Mahashano, Mahapapma. Vidhi, Arjuna, you should know for sure. Enam, this very now. This is your greatest enemy. The enemy does not lie outside of us. Enemy lies within us. Arjuna was shocked. And Arjuna said, my dear Lord, please tell me something more about it. How does it covers up different living entities? Lord Shri Krishna says in the next verse, 38, this lust covers living entities according to the influence of modes. The one who is Sattva Guna is covered like a fire is covered by smoke. One who is in mode of passion, predominantly mode of passion, is covered like mirror covered by dust. And the one who is in ignorance, for them the covering of lust is like embryo covered by womb. I understand we have not discussed the subject matter of mode of goodness, passion, ignorance. We'll see that later on. This is not such an important thing at this point of time, but just to cover the point, like this, different living entities. The first point means fire covered by smoke means you just blow air and the smoke goes away. It's very easy, comparatively easy. Dust, the mirror covered dust, you put some effort, rub it off, scrap it off, you can do it. But you cannot separate the womb from the embryo. Very difficult. So that's how the gradations, less, more and most, like that is being described. Arjun said, my dear Lord, can you please share something more about this enemy? Krishna says, yes, this is Nitya Varinam, Arjuna, this is eternal enemy. Avratam jnaname tena jnani no Nitya Varina kama rupena kamteya dushpurena nalena cha. Avratam jnaname tena, the wise living entity's pure consciousness gets covered over. Nitya Varina, Krishna calls him Nitya Varina. Imagine you're standing at a ticket counter. Consider an example of a station in India, a railway station in India. You're standing there, and we remember those good old days when you're standing on the counter to buy tickets. Sometimes, let's imagine hypothetically, in a hurry to buy a ticket, you have unfortunately and accidentally pushed somebody, and the person gets angry. He may be angry with you as long as you both are on the platform, but once he gets the ticket and goes away, he forgets you, isn't it? That's not Nitya Varinam, that's short-term Varinam. Let's say somebody is most seriously disturbed by your presence in this world, and he has made a choice to get rid of you. And he pays money to a mafia don, what we call a supari in Mumbai language. He pays a supari on your name, and the mafia don puts a man behind you with a gun, like this. So imagine there is a man with a gun behind you. Wherever you go, he's there behind you with a single goal to shoot you out. Yet that is not Nitya Varinam, right? Because that person can only chase you in this life. Krishna says Nitya Varinam, which means life after life. So where is my presentation? Yeah, life after life. What it means? Which means you may be in any species of life, Arjuna, this lust will never leave you. It keeps on chasing you life after life. Therefore, Krishna says, Nitya Varinam. And then what is the nature of this lust? Kama rupena kamteya, dushparena nalena cha. First of all, never satisfied. That's the reason I was saying those who take to Karma Kanda and they try to enjoy life, finally they get a lesson that whatever you do, you can never be satisfied in this world. And then they take to the process of yoga, starting with Karma Yoga. And secondly, the more you try to satisfy it, is like pouring petrol on the fire. The more it burns. Like this, Lord Shri Krishna said. Let me give an example. Imagine it's the 25th December 2021, and you had been cherishing a dream for purchasing a Honda City car for yourself. After years of hard work, you have got enough money to purchase Honda City. You have placed an order, and the company had called you on the day of 25th December for the car delivery. With a family nicely dressed up, with a great joy in your heart, you walk to the store to get the key of your car. Your wife and family is taking photos, posting on Instagram, Facebook, everyone. It's the most joyous moment of your life because you've got a cherished car, the Honda City, for which you worked so hard for several years. And you're driving happily. And you're relishing your first drive in your favorite car back home, back to your apartment, not back to Godhead. Back home, back to your apartment. Right at the corner of the street, when you're about to make a final turn, you see a new billboard. And it has a big hoarding there which says, coming soon, Honda City, new model, new version 2022, releasing on 15th January. Let me ask this question to all of you. How many of you will feel, oh my goodness, only 15 days? I wish I could have waited not just for 15, 20 days, I would have got the new Honda City model. How many of you would have felt like this? You would have developed this another desire. Although you're sitting in your favorite car that you wanted to buy, and now you're again back to ground zero. Yes or no? People can relate to it or not. Anyways, that's one simple example for it. So that's what the nature of, this lust. By the way, the lust doesn't refers to the attraction, sexual attraction for opposite gender. Lust refers to material desires. Like this, the lust continues to trouble us. It's never satisfied. So therefore, how do we deal with it? Lord Shri Krishna will give us 3 tips, 3-step formula for defeating lust, beginning from verse number, if I'm correct, verse number 40 of 3rd chapter. First thing, if you want to fight out your enemy, the very first thing that you need to know, where does your enemy reside? That is a step 1. And Krishna gives a clue, where does our enemy of lust resides. Krishna says, Indriyani mano buddhir asya dhishtanamuchyate eter vimohyati esha jnanam avratya dehinam. Krishna says this lust, the enemy of lust, is sitting at 3 places: senses, mind, and intelligence. That's how this lust has captured 3 strategic positions in our existence. Now, what can we do? All the 3 strategic positions have been compromised. How can we ever be happy or satisfied? The purpose of lust is only to bring misery to our life. Therefore, in the modern times, you see unfortunate news of humans committing suicide. Although they're considered to be an intelligent species, but you never see animals committing suicide. It's just because of this enemy of lust. Let me give you an example to help you understand. Hypothetically, assume you are the chief of Delhi police. 4 days from now is 15th of August celebration in India. Prime Minister, President, all the great dignitaries, important people, along with masses, are going to come and celebrate 15th of August. You're sitting in your office, police headquarters, in the security control room. You're having a meeting and you just concluded a meeting. You're sitting in your office. You have a landline phone on your desk with a caller ID, and a phone rings. Tring, 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 tring. And you see, oh, I'm getting a call. Before you pick up the phone, you see the caller ID, and that shows the code of Afghanistan, or let's say Pakistan. And you wonder, oi, why am I getting call from here, this country? You pick up the phone, and the person who called you says, we are coming on 15th August to blast the Red Fort. If you can save your nation, save it. And Ram cuts the line. How many of you feel palpitations in your heart? Sweat forming on your forehead. Oh my goodness, there's going to be a terrorist attack. So one way is you can rectify it. Other way is you hand it over to the chief of army. Let's say you get handed over to the chief of the army. Army gets involved into it, the chief of the army, and he says, well, we cannot have single tier security. We should have a 3-level security. Do you agree? 3-level security will be far much more foolproof than a single tier security. And the 3-tier security designed in a way, at the first tier, there is a metal detector which will detect if in case anyone is carrying any weapons or bomb. Second tier is a frisking, where a security guard is personally going to check you, all over your body as well as the things that you're carrying. And the third security gate, where the colonel, by his own wish, will decide to allow you inside or not. How many of you say is a good level of security? Is a good security? 3-tier security, what's the chances of anyone to bypass this? 15th morning. A lot of people are coming towards the Red Fort. And one particular man, big beard, wearing a black coat, holding a briefcase, is slowly walking towards the gate. He comes to the first security checkpoint. And as soon as he reaches near to the metal detector, he blinks his eyes to the security personnel standing there, and the security personnel switches off the metal detector. Your first security gate is trespassed. And this person passes through the first security gate without getting checked or detected of anything. So your first security gate is totally compromised. Now he reaches towards a second level of security gate where he's going to get frisked and his luggage would be checked. So he's getting frisked while simultaneously another security guard asks for his briefcase. He opens the briefcase. To his shock, he says, "Oh no, you got 3 bombs. We had told you to get 5. केवल 3 ही लेकर आया." And the man says, "What to do, sir? There is very tight border security. I could only manage to get 3 bombs." And the security person says, "No problem. We'll manage it with 3 bombs." And he'll let you go. So your second tier security is also compromised. Now it's a known case of a terrorist who walks towards the third gate where Colonel is personally looking at every individual. When this terrorist reaches through the third gate, Colonel calls upon the security gate, the security personnel handing the security for the third gate, and he says, "Hand over this person the phone." And Colonel says, "So, I heard that you only got 3 bombs. No problem. Put it on gate number A, gate number B, gate number C." So how great is your security? All the 3 gates have been compromised, and the terrorist walks in, causes havoc. That is exactly what this verse of Bhagavad Gita is saying. There are 3 levels: senses, mind, and intelligence, and all 3 of them have been compromised by the enemy of lust. So unless we fix these security checkpoints, we can never ever deal with lust. Do you all agree with me now? Is it making sense? If we, unless learn to deal with these 3 security checkpoints, fixes it, until then we cannot get rid of lust. We will get defeated again and again, and that's a point. So with that, coming to the last point of this and this subject, 1 second please, is, therefore Lord Shri Krishna says, the battle plan. What is a battle plan? Krishna says, first, there are 3 hideouts: senses, mind, intelligence. The second battle plan is, it is easy to restrict the enemy at the senses level, which means at the first gate. To give an example, there is a lot of improper content on the internet, inappropriate content rather. So we can apply filters, parental control application software to restrict unwanted things from popping up on the internet. So as they say, out of mind, out of sight, out of mind. So that way we can regulate and prevent ourselves. And the third battle plan that Krishna says is knowledge. Arjuna, cultivates spiritual knowledge. Spiritual knowledge will strengthen your intelligence. Higher than senses is mind, higher than mind is intelligence. If intelligence becomes strong, then it can control the mind and senses. Therefore, if you want to overcome and defeat lust, you have to cultivate spiritual knowledge or spiritual intelligence. Therefore, Krishna ends the chapter 3 here, and chapter 4 is titled as Transcendental Knowledge, where Krishna speaks about the transcendental knowledge. And one of the prominent subject of transcendental knowledge is, who is Ishwaraha, who is a living entity. So that is what is going to get discussed in chapter 4. So Srila Prabhupada fortunately have made the subject matter far much more simpler. You don't or may not remember necessarily this 3-step formula, but you will definitely remember the formula that Srila Prabhupada has given us, what is called as ABCD formula for defeating lust. What we have to do, just do these 4 things in your life every day. The very first thing, A, association of saintly people. It is said association is contagious. Hindi mein kehte hain, jaisa sang vaisa rang. So if you associate with saintly people, that is what kind of consciousness you will cultivate, and that is how you will live your life. That is first thing. Second thing, B, for reading books. Replace your comics, your fiction stories, watching of movies and TVs and news with reading of wisdom literatures like Bhagavad Gita, Mahabharata, Ramayana, Bhagavatam, etc., etc. That will help you find role models of courage, chastity, integrity, devotion to God. When you have role models and example in your life, then it becomes easy to live by it. C, chanting mantra, that is called as mantra meditation. Mantra, which means that delivers the mind. If you want to get rid of the distractions of your mind, you have to do meditation, and in Brahma Gauriya Madhava Parampara, to which we belong, we chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And then we come to the last subject matter, not the subject matter, the last D of ABCD, which means diet. Diet does not refer to vegetarian diet alone, but Krishnatarian, which means offer the vegetarian food to Krishna and then accept it as prasadam. So for everything, we have to start it step by step. You can start with chanting one round of Hare Krishna Mahamantra. If in case you are, because of situation, circumstances, have to eat non-vegetarian food, you gradually reduce your non-vegetarian consumption, take to the vegetarian consumption. So wherever we are, we have to take a step forward. You cannot jump entirely what we have discussed. You cannot immediately jump to this position, but gradually take a step forward. That is the point that I want to make it. And with this, we come to the conclusion for today's discussion. Tomorrow evening, when we meet again, Krishna willing, the subject matter will be transcendental knowledge. To conclude and sum up our discussion for today, in chapter 3, the chapter was divided into 4 sections. The very first subject matter was Tyaga. What is renunciation? Renunciation is not of work. Renunciation is of the spirit to enjoy the work or enjoy this world. That is what we need to give up. Second subject matter was those who cannot perform Karma Yoga, what option for them? Krishna discussed yoga ladder. We can identify where we are on the yoga ladder and continue. If you're not on the yoga ladder, start with Karma Kanda. Then Arjuna asked the question, why don't I renounce? Krishna says, become exemplary in your behavior. As you set an example, others will follow. And finally, although I know what is right, yet we fail to follow what is right. Why it is so? I know I should not do it, but I repent after committing it. How can I protect myself? Krishna says, just because of lust. So Krishna then defines what is lust. He says it's Nitya Varina, eternal enemy, Dushparena Nalena Cha, never satisfied, always burning. And then Krishna gives a 3-step formula for defeating lust. Identify the hideouts of lust. Second, control, regulate the senses. Third, cultivate spiritual intelligence through knowledge. Finally, we said Srila Prabhupada has given a more simpler approach, that is ABCD formula for defeating lust and paving a successful and progressive spiritual and material life. With that, we sincerely thank you for your kind attention for today. Kindly excuse me for my delay in starting few minutes late and also taking some extra time today. But sincere gratitude for holding on and listening me patiently. Hare Krishna. If in case anyone would have any questions, so maybe we can take that. So I see question from, Nitin Pawar has a question. How to get that sthit pragyata which was told by Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita? Nitin, please start with the ABCD formula. Just like for your material education, it took almost 18 to 20 years for you to become an engineer, doctor, or whatnot, whatever you are. To become a sthit pragya, to become a self-realized soul, is a journey. You're talking about reaching the top of the mountain. So you are able to see the top of the mountain, but understand to reach the top of the mountain, you have to climb the whole mountain. So to begin that journey, take to the ABCD formula, but be assured, it's a wonderful experience, it's a wonderful journey. Just the journey itself will give you the experience of joy that you never had before. And that's the reason, despite any reversals and hardships that we come across, a sadhaka, a spiritual practitioner, always stays progressive and loyal to the path. All right, Nitin? Okay, there is a second question from Nitin again. I am vegetarian, follows all rules except chanting. Why I don't like chanting much even though I love Krishna a lot? Hare Krishna. Nitin, why don't you unmute and ask this question directly to me? When I get to see you and I hear this question from you, it'll make a little more sense for me to answer you. Can participants unmute and speak the answers?
With the setting we need to change.
Yeah, we need to change. How do I change the setting? Participants. So allow participants to unmute. Great. So you can unmute yourself now. That's it, right?
Correct.
No, that. So Hare Krishna. If anyone wants to speak now, particularly Nitin who had a question, you can go ahead and speak up. Okay, I don't see if he's there or not there. Okay. So, fine. Uh, so I'll take that question. So now we're going to have the sessions on Zoom. So it's my humble request, if in case you have questions, you have the opportunity to ask directly. You can unmute, raise your hand, and then unmute and then ask the question. It's easy for me to actually answer when I see a person. It helps me. At least I know, first of all, what age you are. So that helps me. Fine. So I'll just still give a one-line answer to your question. Why I don't like chanting despite I love Krishna? Don't worry, get into the association of devotees. Everything would follow. Maybe you're having a lack of association of devotees. Once you have the association of devotees, this problem will be taken care. All right? So thank you. So we have one hand up from Mother Smita. Please go ahead, unmute yourself.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji,
Yes, please.
I have a question while chanting. Most of the times it is, the conscious is there, but at times we lose track. How do we get it back?
Yeah, distraction. Welcome to the club of distracted people. Actually, that's the situation with most practitioners when they begin their spiritual life. So, how do I deal with the distractions? And when we lose our track, how do we come back? Let me ask this question. If in case you're still there, I lost you. I saw you on the screen. Imagine Rasgulla is your most favorite sweet. And you haven't had it for weeks and years together. And I bring a bowl of Rasgulla, or let's say Gulab Jamun, which happens to your favorite sweet, and I hand it over to you. Do you think your mind is going to get distracted then? You'll be pretty attentive, relishing every single bite. So first thing, the subject matter of distraction during chanting is we actually have no understanding about Krishna. We don't have any attraction towards Krishna, or we have very little attraction towards Krishna. Therefore, we get distracted very easily. Distraction means there is something else which is more important than what we're doing right now. To our mind. That's the reason we get distracted. Therefore, Srila Rupa Goswami in text 7 of Nectar of Instruction, he says, our condition is like, what is the disease called as? The stomach ache. Pito patapta rasanasya narochikano. Jaundice. Thank you. I always forget the English word. So Srila Rupa Goswami says, our condition is like of a jaundice patient for whom the treatment is a sweet candy. When a jaundice patient takes a sweet candy, it tastes bitter to him. But he has to continue taking the sweet candy because that's also the treatment. Similarly, Rupa Goswami says that's the condition with us in the beginning when we chant the holy names of the Lord. For which Srila Rupa Goswami in Padyavali has written a beautiful verse which says, my dear Lord, when I chant your names, I wish I could have millions of mouths and millions of tongues and millions of ears, because I find such a great satisfaction while chanting or while taking your name Krishna. So that's the state of person who's freed from jaundice. So don't worry, don't get disheartened. Do two things. Your chanting, your quality of chanting is directly related to your quality of hearing about Krishna. If you attentively, regularly hear about Krishna, to that degree you'll be attentive to your chanting. To that degree your mind will become distraction free. So kindly take this point into your practice. And as I said in the beginning, we have a jaundice-like situation. Continue chanting whatever it is, and if possible, increase your Sangha of Vaishnavas, devotee association, and also reading and hearing of scriptures. That will help you becoming more focused in your chanting. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Surendra Kumarji, you have a question? You have your hand up. Please go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
I'm a working professional, and right now I'm doing 16 rounds in a day, like 6 rounds in the morning, and 6 rounds at the night, and 3-4 rounds during the office hours. So I have two questions. Like, is it okay to do all rounds together, or the process I'm following, is it okay? It's right.
Srila
Second
Prabhupada,
question-
let's go one by one, Surendraji. So,
Yeah, okay.
so Srila Prabhupada, once while speaking to his disciple, was speaking about his sadhana schedule when he was a grihastha. And Srila Prabhupada said, when I was a grihastha, how I used to chant my 16 rounds. He said, I would chant 4 rounds in the morning, and then I would chant 4 rounds, 4, 4, 4, 16 rounds. The next set of 3, 4 rounds, next 3 sets of 4 rounds before the meals, which means I'll take 3 meals in a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So before I sit for breakfast, I would chant my 4 rounds. Before I sit for lunch, I'll chant 4 rounds. Like that, Srila Prabhupada said, I would chant my 16 rounds. So Prabhupada said that's okay. I mean, that should not be forever with us. Maybe because of your family and professional responsibility, it could be, but we should be moving in a direction where gradually we are able to have full morning program for ourselves, where we can in one go chant 16 rounds. If not, at least on particular days of appearances of great saintly personalities, on the days like Janmashtami and Ekadashis, at least on those days we should make a point that we sit straight through and chant 16 rounds. All right. So once again, it's my request. It'll be nice if those asking question can have the camera on. That's the reason I agreed to the point of moving to Zoom. So at least I know to who I'm speaking. So in case if any of you are not dressed up properly, we're gonna have a Zoom session. So next time on you can be dressed up properly so you can switch on your camera. Okay, just a side point. Surendra Kumar, you have a second question.
Second question is, like I have some of my friends who normally take 6 to 6.5 minutes to complete one round.
Correct.
Whereas I'm taking up to 7 to 8 minutes or sometimes 8.5 minutes. So does it matters like time limit? Secondly, like initial rounds, I can pronounce very correctly Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. But as it goes, like on 5th or 6th round, I sometimes Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare, like this. So is it okay, sir?
So where do you live, Surendraji?
I'm living in Pune, Avagoli.
Oh,
area.
okay. So two things. Every morning at 4:30, we organize a japa meditation, 15 minutes. So every morning I speak around, we have prayer session for 5 minutes, and for around 10 to 15 minutes I speak before we get into the chanting. So if you would like, you can join that. That's the time where we discuss most of the things. Even if you're not able to join, at least you can hear the recordings. Every day you'll get a recording for 10-15 minutes of what on the subject matter of chanting. So we have our coordinator Madan Medhavni here. Madan Medhavni, if you have the possibility, you can share the Brahma Murta program WhatsApp link here for those who would be interested, because a lot of questions have come on the subject of chanting. We primarily discuss about chanting and how to improve our chanting every morning. So I would request her to share that first thing. Second thing, Surendraji, which you can do is maybe at Hinjawadi you can come, or maybe go to temple on the days of Ekadashi. We organize a kind of an event where devotees assemble together and chant 64 rounds. Coming together and chanting more rounds help us deal with some of these kind of an issues that we face. And the third thing that you can do right away, we have to understand whenever it is going beyond 7.5 minutes, in general, your mind has got into some daydreaming while chanting. When a person is chanting attentively all through, generally it gets done in 6 minutes. But when you are thinking something else, when your mind is distracted, generally it takes more time. First thing. Second thing, How to deal with the mind while chanting? Srila Prabhupada had a simple formula: ignore the mind. But that is a big challenge for most of us. We cannot ignore the mind. We are so consumed by the mind. So His Grace Purijan Prabhu gives a fantastic tip. When you sit down for chanting, don't tell yourself that I'm going to sit and chant 16 rounds. Don't even tell yourself, means tell your mind that I'm going to sit and chant 1 round. Just make the simple point. My dear mind, I just want to hear this mantra which I'm chanting now. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And keep on repeating this prayer. My dear mind, I'm just going to hear this mantra. Give it a simple task, because our mind right now is in such a state of passion that it needs to act, it needs to do something. So we are not in a state of consciousness where we can ignore the mind or our mind can become silent. So we need to give it a simple task. And the task is, let's just hear this mantra that I'm chanting. Let's just hear this mantra I'm chanting. Continue building upon this thing. First thing. Second thing, when you feel too distracted, in case you're getting too much disturbed or distracted with thoughts, put your bead bag aside, sit straight, and do pranayam for 3 to 5 minutes, or maybe 3-4 minutes for that reason. The breathing exercises, consciously focusing your attention on taking breath in and taking breath out. Consciously, when you do so, it frees your mind from the clutter. That's another tip you can do to set your mind free from distraction. So these are some of the things that I can suggest you for that. Let Surendra ji, if I'm correct, was the name.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yes, Santosh ji.
Yeah, hi, Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dandavata Pranam.
Yes, please. Danvats.
So I've been following, I've been chanting 16 rounds regularly since last 2 weeks, and it has helped me greatly to come out of material desires, and and it has really helped me. So my first question to you is how to be consistent in the practices, like how to be, how to channelize our energies and be consistent and focused and continue doing the 16 rounds.
For that, you have to put yourself in Sangha of devotees. You have to ask yourself what kind of association you're keeping, because association have a great impact on us. So we have to increase our sadhu sangha, association of Vaishnavas, which will involve, if I don't know, wherever you stay, let's say you stay in a part of a city where temple is half an hour, 45 minutes away from your place. So make sure at least once in a week you go and attend a program, some program. Just don't go and ring a bell and come back. Go in here, attend the satsang or the classes that happens there, or attend the morning program. So you have to increase your sadhu sangha. So just like if somebody wants to become a smoker, what he has to do? Just associate with people who smoke. You naturally become a smoker. I mean, it's just so incredible, somebody would like to smoke. I mean, I generally say people, why are you wasting money in purchasing a smoke? There's already so much smoke on the roads of Pune. Just go and inhale that. You'll at least help in removing the air pollution. On top of it, you're creating further smoke by buying a smoke. It just doesn't make sense. So why somebody would get into smoking a cigarette? It's just because he's associating with people. In contrast, you're doing something which gives you a great pleasure, is good for your physical, mental, intellectual, and spiritual health. So why wouldn't you want to do it? If you're facing challenges with it, it's just because maybe we're not having the like-minded association, in whose association you feel more inspired to take to spiritual life and culture. So that is something which on priority needs to be fixed. Only then every other areas of concern can be taken care. All right?
Yeah, I have, thank you, Prabhuji. I have one more question. So I am currently working as an IT professional. So basically, I have a question related to how to find a balance or boundaries when we interact with our, actually there is office work as well as the work which we do personally, and we take care of the family and other stuff. So how to bring a balance in that scenario?
I missed the last point. Can you say the last point? You're talking about work-life balance?
Yeah, so how to bring a balance between work and life, personal life. So, for example, I work every day, like Monday to Friday, so 8 to 9 hours. Then I get really tired, and then sometimes it drains the complete energy. And how
Correct.
to balance it with, again, to reinforce or re-energize consciousness.
Because the root of work-life balance, which is a very important question, the root of work-life balance is a desire management. If we get into work-life management, you have to deal with your desire. What kind of desires, are impelling you to make certain decisions in your life. See, ultimately, whatever we do is governed by our desires, what we want in our life. And that dictates us and makes us take certain kind of decisions and have a certain kind of a lifestyle. So if your desire is to strengthen your spiritual life, you will make that as a priority. If you have less desires to gratify your senses, you save time, you save your money, and that time can go back strengthening your spiritual life. So this whole work-life balance, one has a spiritual aspect of it, where you strengthen your spiritual life, that gives you the ability to make right decisions and quick decisions. So you make right choices in your professional career. I know people who did not take promotion just because of the fear that I'll get much more workload that I can handle and it will destroy my ongoing spiritual practice. This is desire management. Second thing, on the work side, on that side, what you can do is you take out 15 minutes in the morning. I generally give this 15 minutes formula. Wake up early in the morning, take up 15 minutes for yourself. Set that area clean for yourself. Sit there and divide those 15 minutes in 5 minutes. Of course, I believe you're chanting already 16 rounds. So let's not give you a 15-minute formula. Let's give you a 5-minute formula. You're anyways doing your spiritual practice. Just take out a 5 minutes for yourself in the morning and start creating a to-do list. What is a to-do list? The things that I ought to be doing today. The priorities. And then before you prepare the to-do list for today, review the list that you had prepared yesterday, how much you could accomplish and how much is pending. A lot of our time gets wasted in not knowing what I'm supposed to do at this point of time. Wasting our time in insignificant things or less important things. Once we have our priorities defined for the day, there's a lot can be accomplished in a single day within the same given time limit, and that will help you to deal with your work pressure and bring about a work-life balance a bit. All right, Santoshi, is a subject matter, but I just spoke something in brief. Maybe in future we can have a whole dedicated session on this topic. Fine? So...
Yeah, thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Santoshi. We'll have a discussion sometime in future on this detail. So it's almost 8:35. We are almost done with our time. Once again, thank you all for joining in and with the kind attention. With this note, I close for today. Srila Prabhupada Ji ki Jai.